want the facts? We got it here. It's hot, it's black. Come sit and sip black tea.
Good evening, and welcome to episode 4. Black students, black teachers, white schools. How does it feel to be a black student or teacher in a predominantly white institution? Well, I've done my research, and I've talked to a lot of students, Greek letter fraternity members, actors and actresses, as well as professors about their experience here in Penn State being on a white campus while black. So, sit back and let me spill the tea. In 1960, federal marshals had to shield Ruby Bridges from angry crowds as she enrolled in school in New Orleans, Louisiana. In 1968, the Supreme Court ordered states to dismantle segregated school systems, roots and branch. 1971, the court approved busing and other tools as appropriate remedies to overcome the role of residential segregation in perpetuating racially segregated schools. Fast forward to today, and America has seen a boom in black excellence and black educators. The Ruby Bridges Foundation was established to promote tolerance and create change through education. And lastly, a young girl from California who had to ride those same buses is now our Madam Vice President. Today's generation of students and teachers have so much wisdom to give. There's always time to learn. And we're all students of life, right? But we still have a long way to go from here to combat racism. I hope you like your tea hot. Being a part of the greatest sorority in the universe, Zeta Phi Beta, I've always been curious about other Greek life participants. Well, meet Kelly Shege, who not only is a friend of mine, but my constitutionally bound fraternity brother. He was very eager to speak with me.
So I am a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I crossed the Rho Beta chapter, which is University of North Carolina in Greensboro, back in fall 15. And our motto is Culture for Service, Service for Humanity.
So is that a HBCU or a PWI?
So I actually crossed at a PWI.
Right, okay. So what did it feel like being a black Greek on a predominantly white institution or a predominantly white campus?
It was definitely different. And I think being there at UNCG, which is kind of right across the street from North Carolina A&T, and then having our brothers over there really close, I was able to kind of see that difference pretty vividly, to the extent that our fraternity, compared to, say, some of the other white fraternities on campus, didn't necessarily have the same type of funding or the same type of rules even, to where we had to be a little bit more on point for everything we did if we didn't want to get in trouble or if we wanted to stay on campus.
Do you feel like Penn State operates with that same type of mentality as far as the bias or favoritism for white fraternities and sororities versus the black ones?
I would say, yeah. And I think you can see it even with some of the issues that have come up in the past year, from people dying to parties still happening on campus while the pandemic is going on, that the university doesn't necessarily do anything about it. They kind of just issue warnings or kind of push it under the rug, as opposed to some of the parties that, say, the black fraternities have had that are shut down within seconds.
Do you feel that you are respected by non-black Greek-lettered organizations?
I want to say no, and I want to say no because respect also has to come with understanding, and I feel like they just don't understand what our organizations are about or even what we do.
So I am a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, which was founded in December 4th, 1906 at Cornell University. The reason why I wanted to be a part of Alpha, really the history. I mean, that it was the first, Black Greek letter organization is obviously important to me. But also when I looked at, some of the history, some of the prominent members, the things that they stood for, the things that we still stand for, those are things that I wanted to align myself with. And so things like education, things like, love for all mankind, those were the principles and things that I most wanted to align myself with.
What do you feel about your experience being a first-generation Kenyan American is different than the experience of an African American?
I would say that there are a lot more issues that I might see as my own that, say, an African American might not see as their own. In terms of Black issues in America, I think if you live in America as a Black person, those are your issues. And for African Americans, it's a little hard to look at the world in a global perspective if they can't kind of fix what's going on here. So there's a struggle going on here for African Americans, but there's still a struggle going on across the world for Black people as a whole. And being Kenyan American and being around these immigrant communities and being around other Kenyans, I've started to kind of understand what the international struggle is as well for a lot of these people, which sometimes is an immigration issue or just a colonialism issue. Like racism is just kind of the child of colonialism. Like a lot of what's happened here in America is because of a lot of what Britain has done in Africa.
I was initiated as a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated as an undergraduate. There are 4 cardinal principles to the organization, which are manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. But beyond that, Omega has a history of contributions to the community. One of the earliest contributions by an Omega man that might be seen nationally is that our 7th honorary member, Carter G. Woodson, began Negro History, or Negro Achievement Week, which became Negro History Week, which eventually evolved into Negro History Month. But beyond that, we have multiple national mandated programs. Voter registration is one. Blood drive is one, so we try to get out and have people donate blood. We're active in the community in multiple respects. We've had storied scholars and activists over time, but the greater intention is to essentially have the greatest union of Negro thinkers in the country amongst our membership.
When we're talking about, Greek matters and Greek organizations, and typically someone, whether they be from, the Penn Hellenic or the IFC, right? They'll say, oh yeah, I was in a fraternity and yada, 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 right? And we did these things. So that's nice. Yeah, I'm in a fraternity, right? We do X, Y, and Z, right? And so, for us, it's not about whether, what we did in college.
Exactly.
It's no, to be in a Black Greek letter organization is to commit to this work lifetime. Right? And so that's what, that's what I kind of make sure that I reiterate. So it's it's more than just what you see on the campus. It's more than the steps. It's more than the parties. It's more than wearing the nice, cool clothes and everything like that. There's a big piece of this, right, that happens. Actually, the biggest pieces of this, right, the biggest pieces of what it means to be a Black Greek letter organization happens after you graduate, right? And the biggest case in point of that, most currently right now, is our Madam Vice President, right? She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and all of the major things that she has done and the major progress she has made and the barriers that she has broken, just her as an example, happened after she graduated. She went, to Howard University, historically black college, where Alpha Kappa Alpha was founded, and she graduated, and then became a lawyer, right? But she became a district attorney, as an AKA, after she graduated. She became a state, attorney general after she graduated, right? She became a senator for California after she graduated. And so, right, that to me is what separates it. It's more of like a duty, right? A sense of duty, a sense of purpose, a sense of longing, right? So like Alpha, we say our motto is manly deeds, scholarship, and love for all mankind. Those things happen. Like, yeah, you take those pledges and those things like as an undergrad for some folks, but like to really live that creed, that happens after you graduate, right? That happens when you're not on the yard, as they say. That happens when you're not right in the classroom. No, that happens when I'm on my job. That happens when I'm interacting, at the supermarket with folks. That happens when I'm engaging in protests and engaging in those things. I'm exhibiting that love for all mankind when I'm in protest. I'm exhibiting that manly deeds and things when I'm, out living in the world, right? One of the things that, my mentors and my, brothers have taught me is that, right, you're always wearing your letters.
Well, I was able to sit down and briefly speak with the members of the theater community to see how race plays a part in their world. Stay tuned for a special performance.
I have spent my entire Penn State career compromising for the benefit of my classmates. Obviously, they're all white, and I'm black. And there have been so many instances where I've been put on the back burner while they're the ones being served. And I thought when I came to London that things would be different. That this would be the one semester where professors would put me as a priority, where I would be considered. Wishful thinking, I know. Different country, same mess. But there comes a point where you gotta put your foot down and you can't deal with the mess anymore. And in that moment, I promised myself that I would never put their white comfort as a priority. I said, Jalen, you have to make sure they know you matter. That you can walk in a room and take up space just like everybody else, that all of that stuff matters. I mean, y'all say my life matters, right? That's what y'all say? Okay. Then why don't you put some action behind that and actually make it matter?
Well, I've tried to rationalize this and think about it, and this is the thing that I've come to, is that when you looking at the police brutality and the shootings and all of those instances, it's not science, if that makes sense. It's not, it can be put into a box of that is social justice issues, and that's not a science issue. An example that comes to mind is I went to a scientific talk that was based on genetics, and it was looking at connecting a person's genetics with what things are they experiencing in their natural life. And so, your genetics respond to the physical experiences that you're having. They were taking 23andMe data and looking at what are the genetics and the genes that this person is giving us, and then what are the self-reported experiences that they're having. And what this study saw is that there are possible connections between a person who grows up in an abusive home, a person who goes to sleep hungry, a person who receives emotional abuse and physical abuse. Those things can be connected at a greater correlation to mental disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders. And sitting in this seminar, me as a black person, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the this describes a good number of black people in this world, a good number of impoverished people in this world. And they are literally, in my mind, what they were saying was, you put these people in these conditions and you're causing them these mental disorders. They weren't making the real life connection and the real life implications of, this could possibly be the cause of this.
So, what obstacles do you feel, if you faced any, at Penn State that your other classmates or colleagues won't face or haven't faced?
These current times really put into perspective the things that I have to think about compared to other people, that extra tax, that added on tax. Most of my life, I didn't really pay attention to the things that were going on around me, which is why I feel like I have been able to cope and make it so far where I am without being broken down by the world around me. A lot of racist things, I tend to just let it go over my head, or I don't pay it any attention at all, or it doesn't get time of day in my brain. But of recently, I have opened myself up a little bit more. I've become a little bit more vulnerable to what's going on in the world around me.
After a great conversation with Letitia, I met with my friend, Jeff Landers Nolan, community member and activist.
The school system, if you had asked me at the time, when I was 16, 17, going through the school system, what racism did I see day to day around me, I would have had some trouble answering that, because it's not something I looked for, not something I necessarily noticed. My friend groups didn't include a ton of people of color, so I wasn't seeing it, and therefore I think this is where the curriculum part comes in. It can be easy to think well, that's a past thing. I remember very distinctly getting the sense, as I was growing up and learning about the civil rights movement, for example, the distinct sense that this is a past thing, and not just that it was a past thing, but that this was a mistake. These were errors, this was ignorance, that, well, yes, there were people who were bad and wrong, but we know better now, and that's not what we're doing now. And, now that we've learned and have decided to stop doing these things, not been made to, that just doesn't happen anymore, right? I never heard the term redlining until I was in my 20s. And we never talked about how that still continues in a more subtle fashion. So the State College Area School District, in my personal experience, was great. I thought it was wonderful. But the sense I got through the curriculum, they weren't erasing slavery, right? They didn't eliminate it from the textbooks. They didn't, yes, I heard a little bit about the Trail of Tears and things like that. They didn't omit things in that large a way. I never had a sense that there was a struggle, broadly speaking. He taught us about the incredible amount of violence around labor unions in the late 19th century. Never heard a bit about that beforehand. The people were literally dying for the right to collectively bargain. And these things are related. Class justice, racial justice, being given the sense of, look at all this great stuff that happened and now we're in a good place, leaves you with a sense of complacency. And that was, I think, the biggest thing that I felt was implanted in me, through the way I learned about this stuff.
Tonight, in our latest segment, Poems with T. I like to write a poem about the time this little white boy called me a nick. I'm sorry. I can't use the word. It's busy. busy bedding down with dictionary editors, shuffling back and forth between Huck Finn and New Jack City. Oh, it's busy. And I wouldn't want to disturb it. You know, I thought I'd write a poem about the time when I was 9, this little white boy called me I'm sorry, I still can't use the word. It's busy, all wrapped up with Quentin Tarantino. And I wouldn't want to disturb it. You know, I thought I'd write a poem about the time when I was 9, this little white boy, he said it, we were playing on the pinball machine. He's told his father, wait, I want to play on the pinball machine as soon as the gets through with it. Mooching amusement in the toy department. I mean, neither one of us could afford the damn thing, but this little white boy called me I'm sorry, I still can't use the word. For some reason, black folks got their mouths around it. Chewing it, swallowing, regurgitating, chewing and swallowing again, and they're telling me they're calling cow cud what I thought was either way, I can't stomach it or say it. So since the word is busy, I wouldn't want to disturb it. You know, I thought I'd write a poem about the time this little white boy who could be my ex-best friend, who could be my classmate, who could be our next president, the time this little white boy called me and... You know what? You know what? I won't use the word. I'm busy. Yeah, busy. Busy involved in self-definition and world reconstruction. Busy. I said I got work to do, and I am tired of being disturbed.
Osaze, my son, my firstborn. My desire was to name him after me, but I wanted to.
We need to have conversations with those folks who do not think like us, with those folks who disagree with us, right? And sometimes it's easier for them to, it's more palatable if it's coming from somebody that looks like them.
I don't think it needs reform. I think it needs to be broken down completely and rebuilt. Because I personally don't feel that we can change what already exists. I don't see that happening successfully.
Is there racism within the theater and film industry, and why is it important for us to do projects like the Osaze Project?
100% racism in theater and film. Yeah, it totally,
It was like all the black characters are so stereotypical. All the black characters seem to have these kind of negative things associated with them, whereas the white character is different. And it wasn't like there were a balance of good black characters too, because if they did that, it would have been fine. But it wasn't. It was just the one Duke who was the light-skinned black dude who had it all and was like the charming guy. He's now the it boy in Hollywood right now. So it's like, it's one of those things where like, even when they try, like they're still messing up. Luckily, there are a lot of phenomenal, specifically female writers in the theater today that are doing some really great work. And so hopefully that can expand, and then people, can start to really put those initiatives and say, hey, here's some really great stories too. So.
Thank you so much for joining us, Herb. I really appreciate you taking your time out.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It was great.
We were fortunate enough to hear from Divine Lipscomb, who shares his thoughts not only as an adult learner continuing his education, but one of the 2021 candidates for the State College Borough Council.
As an adult learner at a predominantly white institution, it has been different to be in this space. But I don't think as a student there's been any direct racism taught to me. Now, when you look at the curriculum, that's a totally different story. Whereas, as a formerly incarcerated student, I was studying criminology when I first got to Penn State. I had the opportunity to see how this system and the individuals, the educators teaching within this system upheld racist and oppressive ideologies, and how we incarcerate, how we over police, and eventually how we funnel our children, particularly our black and brown boys, into the correctional system and a lifetime of systematic oppression.
In the high school level, my sons regularly get asked for a pass to say the N-word from their white classmates. Once Maxwell there was a kid in a grade below him who was walking around calling him the N-word to other people, not to my son himself. So much so that the other kids reported this child to the office. They pulled my son out of class, the counselor did, to talk to him. And when she did that, she never called me. She didn't send me an email, nothing from the school at all. I found out months later when my son accidentally told me at the dinner table because he didn't want me to go in school and make a big deal out of it. So there's minimal communication from the school in regards to these incidents. I believe because they don't want to deal with marking them down as racial incidents and what that would mean for the school district. So.
Join us now for a clip from The Black Boy Who Thought He Had It All.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so for my first piece, I'm gonna do a call and response. I'm gonna call, your masculinity is so fragile. You're gonna respond, how fragile is it? So let's practice. Your masculinity is so fragile.
How fragile is it?
Okay, beautiful. For real now. Your masculinity is so fragile.
How fragile is it?
That it would starve in a house made of kitchens. It seems to only know how to make meals of women's bodies. So fragile that the air suddenly gets dusty every time you watch the movie The Notebook, instead of just admitting that the shit is sad and it made you cry. Your masculinity is so fragile.
How fragile is it?
That it thinks you have to have a dick and be one in order to be considered a real man. So fragile that it thinks showing excitement for anything other than money, sports, and vagina is gay. So fragile that you can't even admit when you're brokenhearted and in need of love. Your masculinity is so fragile.
How fragile is it?
That when a woman says no, you hear try harder. So fragile that when a woman rejects your gift wrap cat call, she's now the slut in the home. So fragile that when you rape a woman, you can't even own up to it. Your masculinity is so fragile.
How fragile is it?
That you always gotta say no homo, bro, every time you tell another man you love him. So fragile that you constantly trying to prove to the boys that you a real man. So fragile that if it were to shatter, you'd probably expect a woman to still get on her knees and clean it up. Lord, your masculinity is so fragile.
How fragile is it?
That it can never fully be your fault. So fragile that we must come to terms with the fact that this world makes men hard, because it's so much easier than letting them be exposed and open. I pray that one day your masculinity will shatter, and you will be relieved of the heavy weight of what it thinks it should be. And on that day, I look forward to meeting the real you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And tonight, we have Jalen Martin, writer, director, and creator of The Black Boy Who Thought He Had It All. Thank you so much for joining us, Jalen.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So can you give me your perspective on being a black professor within the theater world here at Penn State, and your perspective as being a student on that side?
How long do we have today?
Shoot, dang.
Where do I start that? 'Cause, you know, I am I'll start where I am now. I've been at Penn State for almost 18 years. That's been a large portion of my life. You know, outside of living in Georgia, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. So outside of living in Atlanta, this is the place I've lived the longest. I never thought or intended or dreamed that I would be here this long. However, I'm a believer in divine order, and I believe in a higher power and my creator, and so I've been here for a reason. And that reason has been to connect with folks like Jalen and other students who connect with what I have to bring to them, and vice versa, because it's not a one-way street. I believe as a professor, my background and my experience offers something to the students, but they give so much back to me as well. And so it's just been a wonderful up and down roller coaster journey being here at State College as a Black woman doing this kind of work in the School of Theater. It has not always been on the forefront. I'll often liken my work to eating food, right? And so in the School of Theater or in this institution, you have your meat, your potatoes, and maybe a vegetable. And then my work has felt like it's been parsley or salt and pepper that somebody sprinkled on after the food is cooked, right? It's like, it's not marinated and infused in as a part of it. It's like, oh, you're here, thank you. Let me just put a little dash of this on there. So what I've had to do is figure out how to infuse myself in a way that's authentic for me, and that is authentic for my students, so that my value is not derived from the institution in front of me.
Yeah, very similar, and we talked about that. I think a lot of the time, like, we think that the situations are like, this is like very student driven, but no, like I tell Kikor, I don't know how you have survived here that long, because like even the now four, yeah, that I've been here, I've been like, I don't know how I did this. So I can't imagine 18 of them, because it's just hard. But I think like Emily, in our one of our senior classes last semester, we were reading this show, and I can't remember the name of it, so that's unfortunate. But in it, it talks about white sound, and we were talking about like, what does that white sound mean? Why is that important? And it's literally like, what we came to the conclusion to was, you know, as a white student here, you come and you're like, you know, you're in your white world. The white sound is like you just being in your white world, and it's like, that's normal for you. But then you have like Black students, and we come here and like, we're trying to infuse ourselves into this white sound, and it's like, for one, I don't really know if they want us here. Also, that's not for us to like change ourselves and be like, let me try and like force myself to be a part of this culture, rather than us, like Hikora said, you know, this is me, this is what you're gonna get, and it is what it is. And so I think that's like when you get here, it's hard to like be like that, because you want to have friends. Especially someone like me, I came all the way from Colorado, so I didn't know nobody. So I was like, I don't want to not have friends, but I also don't want to, jeopardize my integrity and like who I am as a person. So navigating that is always hard. I still struggle sometimes. I'm like, Lord, am I gonna give him Jalen, or am I gonna try and like sanitize who I am? I think most days recently I've been pretty good at, this is what you're gonna get. But yeah, and navigating it is like, it's like any other place in America. Sometimes you gotta pick your battles, and you can't always like deal with the foolishness because you'll be tired. But it's also been great, because I say like all the time, like, if I didn't come here, I wouldn't have this film. I wouldn't have been able to collaborate like with Kikora and her husband Wendell and like my classmates that were in the film. Like I wouldn't have been able to do that. So, silver lining. As a white student here, you come and you're like, you're in your white world. The white sound is like you just being in your white world, and it's like, that's normal for you. But then you have like Black students, and we come here and like, we're trying to infuse ourselves into this white sound, and it's like, for one, I don't really know if they want us here. Also, that's not for us to like change ourselves and be like, let me try and like force myself to be a part of this culture, rather than us, like Hikora said, this is me, this is what you're gonna get, and it is what it is. And so I think that's like when you get here, it's hard to like be like that, because you want to have friends. Especially someone like me, I came all the way from Colorado, so I didn't know nobody. So I was like, I don't want to not have friends, but I also don't want to, jeopardize my integrity and like who I am as a person. So navigating that is always hard. I still struggle sometimes. I'm like, Lord, am I gonna give him Jalen, or am I gonna try and like sanitize who I am? I think most days recently I've been pretty good at this is what you're gonna get. But yeah, and navigating it is like it's like any other place in America. Sometimes you gotta pick your battles, and you can't always like deal with the foolishness because you'll be tired.
Yeah, I think you asked a really big question. How does racism, how is it reflected in theater and in our everyday media? I think it's all over the place because we are where we are, and our country has the history that it has. And unfortunately, our country ignores that history in so many ways and tries to sanitize or erase the truth of how America came to be. It doesn't give us a true picture and a true understanding of who we are, starting when you go to school. That begins in elementary school all the way through your university years. If you choose to go to a university, you are fed the same mythology of America. And it's unfortunate that America doesn't believe enough in people that we can't both look at ourselves critically and also love the place that we're in.
Hi, my name is Kyle Blumenthal. I'm a junior here at Penn State.
Hi, I'm Jenna Wood, and I'm also a junior at Penn State.
Hi, I'm Emily Eritz, and I'm a senior with Jalen here at Penn State.
There were a lot of them. I actually do not have, I don't know if I have enough time to go through everything in that play, but I was like, rewatching it last night, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna ask about that, I wanna talk about that. And it was just so much. So I wanna start with saying the N-word while singing. And I think that was your character, right? How did you feel having to say this in real time? And had you ever actually done this before in real life prior to actually being in the play?
Right, so I got the role of Lexi, and when the first time I read it, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, this is Jalen's real life, this is his real experience, and I have to honor that as his friend and support him in, playing this character. And it was something that I wasn't familiar with myself. I mean, it's something I learned whenever I was very young, is like, that's just, you never say that. Like, you just don't. Like, that was my parents were, good enough to be able to tell myself and my brothers, hey, like, this is not okay. But at the same time, I think the one thing I held on to in that moment for that character was how important it was to be the reflection of the ignorance that a lot of people at Penn State and just in general have in terms of, oh, it's just a song. I think that kind of sentence that Jalen wrote in there really like encapsulated that character. Oh, it's just a song. And for Lexi and for many people like Lexi, people needed to see that and be like, oh, that's what I look like when I act like that? That's how I make people feel? That's what that means? To be that mirror and that reflection of this thing that people just ignore. And that's what I held on to. And in terms of me being uncomfortable, the way I thought about it, and I talked to Jalen about this, I was like, me being uncomfortable being an actor, replicating something that happened to you in real life is quite small compared to how many times you've experienced this in your life and how many other people experience that.
I grew up in like a smaller town, Northeast PA, and I think I knew 5 black people growing up total. Like we were a really white town. And like when we were doing it and we had that like run-in with a student, our classmate, who was like, this doesn't happen at parties. Oh my God, did this happen at a party? I'm like, have you ever been to a party? Like, where have you been? It wasn't like, nobody even back home told me it was wrong. It wasn't even really a thing that was like ever talked about because there was no reason. And so I didn't know it was wrong or like anything about it. And I think the first time I realized like, oh, like I should never say that word ever. Not that I ever had a reason to, but I'm like, oh, this is a learning moment. It was actually, even the year before, it was the first conversation Jalen and I actually had like ever deeply. And I said something about Dave Chappelle. And Jalen's like, I love Dave Chappelle. And I was like, oh my God, I have a common ground with you. I'm so excited to talk about this. And I don't know if I was recounting a lyric or a joke, but I said it to you. And I went home for 2 days and I was like, did that come out of my mouth? Did I say that? And I thought on it for so long, and I went up to him and I'm like, I need to apologize to you. Like, I've never really even said that in my life, and for the moment for that to come out to you, I'm like, I don't even think it could ever process in my brain how harmful that is. And Jalen's like, I don't remember that. I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, I mean, people, like, if I remembered every time someone said that to me, you know, I'd have a lot.
If I got upset about it, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, so you're not mad? And he's like, well, just obviously don't do it. And I'm like, cool. But I don't think it ever processed to me that you wouldn't like have thought on it 2 days like I did, because that's something you had to build up on. And it's something we talked about, like even coming from a poor area that was white, I've never felt other in my life. I'm the default everywhere I go until I got here, and I was like, oh, people aren't really like in the same economic class as me, or I had like a lesser education before coming here. And just like over the years of conversations with Jalen, I've been like, wow, like to be other in every space, like that is not something I don't even think I'd be prepared to do ever. And that's just something that you do every day.
Did you have something?
Yeah. So this idea of feeling other, also like really white private school growing up, mainly all white. I worked at a community theater in West Philadelphia where I had now become the other, and it was such a growing and shocking experience for me to never fully know what it's like to be the other always at all times, but it just opened my eyes because it's a concept that I had never even fully processed before, and I have never even dipped my shoes into at all. And while I don't really have any specific stories about that experience, I just feel like there is nothing that I can do that can kind of change the fact that, you know, I was the little white boy growing up, other than just try and keep listening and learning and being the best ally that I can and growing every day and knowing that, like, I don't know, I will never know what it's like to truly feel other. And that experience of working in that community theater in West Philadelphia, it just, the feeling just like I'm in a completely thrown off culture than what I am used to living in suburban Philadelphia. Oh my gosh, it just like, yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. But like it's not even welcome because because there was no malicious intent towards me, no mal impact towards me. I was definitely welcome, and I learned so much. And so many different cultures, so much jazz and so much beautiful showmanship came through there. It was great. I loved it so much, and I wish I could go back and just kind of relive those days from where I'm at now, and after, you know, some of the work that I've done in my allyship, to go and tell that kid Kyle to go take this back to your high school and go to those like really privileged white friends of yours and be like, dude, like, oh my gosh, you are living in a bubble of culture, and it is hurtful to other people, your actions and your ignorance.
What did you take from this overall experience from the black boy who thought he had it all? And would you today, in today's time, trade places with a black person?
I think I took away how to use my storytelling and my strengths, my writing, my acting, and directing to be a good ally, and how to appropriately do that. And would I trade places?
Yeah, I think for me, what I took away from this experience was, you know, how important it is to help people tell their stories and how important Jalen's story is, and everyone liked Jalen, and I was a part of the Osaze Project as well, and how these stories aren't talked about, and how important they are, and how we need to be pushing forward to get these stories out there. And this is the first time that, you know, the School of Theater acknowledged, you know, his story. And I think I took away just, you know, a different perspective, and I never really understood, you know, this like white bubble. And how big it is. I thought maybe it was just my high school, where I would be in high school and I'd be like, these people are doing these things and I think they're wrong, but they're like the whole the desensitized is what you guys said. It's way bigger and there's way more stories. And when we keep acknowledging and we keep pushing and we keep having, you know, allies and everything, and just telling these stories and making people really look at themselves and evaluate, you know, like Hikora said, the history. And we're smarter than that, than what's been fed to us. And if we learn and we choose to educate ourselves, you know, we can really make an impact. And I think what Jalen showed, that really showed me how much of an impact I could make as an artist in this world. And my answer would be no.
I think it's a little, like Jenna said, I mean, back home, I think being like known as like PC police, like shut the fuck up, pussy, just say it with a soft A if you're gonna be an asshole. And I'm like, man, this feels wrong, right? And then coming here with the show, I mean, I've been with Jalen the whole time. I think it's a little different for me to get to grow as his friend and his classmate. I mean, we lived together. And to be a part of this piece was just reliving every moment Jalen had experienced, and I was right by him and I didn't see a lot of it. And so getting to be a part of it was a lot of it as an actress. It was a challenge to, learn how to use my storytelling, that's someone else, but also as a friend, it was a way to be there for the times that I just fucking wasn't. And if I could help with the piece, then maybe I would learn something about my life. And I think that question is so hard, and as his friend, I would change places with Jalen in a heartbeat, just because I don't want anything I know that happened to him. I don't want that for him, but I think the more important answer is that as a white person, no, I wouldn't, because I don't think that anyone should be treated like that. I don't think that's how anyone should have to live. So my empathy and my love for my friend is like, I would take that for you. But the bigger message is that no one should have to take that for anyone. No one should be treated like this. And the quicker we recognize that as white people, the quicker we could be better allies and help move on with it.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. And tune in next for our next segment, What's the Tea?
Titus Burgess, famous for his role on The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, was born and raised in Athens, Georgia. He was an actor in theater at his high school and then graduated from University of Georgia with a BA in music. In addition to television, Burgess is also a very talented Broadway singer. He starred in productions like Jersey Boys, The Wiz, and most recently, Ratatouille the Musical, exclusively on TikTok. Burgess has been nominated for several awards, taking home a Webby Award and a Gold Derby TV Award for his portrayal of Titus Andromedon in 2015.
Hey, and we're back with What's the Tea? Let's get right into it, because I know this one is going to be a doozy. Dear T, why did you make this show? You know what? That's a great question. I believed that State College was living behind this happy valley mask. And I wanted to take off the mask so we can actually get down deep to the root of the problems that are ailing this community. And I also know that the only reason we have conflict in this community is because we don't have conversations. And conversations are the only way to truly understand, sympathize, and empathize with the next human being and move forward. I wanted a platform where I, as a Black woman, could speak freely, and people of other races, ethnic backgrounds, beliefs could sit across the table from me, and we could have a conversation and truly get to the bottom of what ails us as a country, which is racism. And so I was so fortunate to run into Pablo Lopez, who actually believed in this dream. And I was also fortunate enough to find community members who agreed and disagreed with me to come and sit down and actually have a conversation about the real and hard truths about our country and about Center County. So that's why I wanted this show. I wanted to make sure we had a platform where we could really have an authentic and uncomfortable conversation. Dear T, what do you think about the ambush that was done to the Black Caucus on the recent Zoom call? Well, as a supporter of the Black Caucus, the Penn State Black Caucus, and the members there, I am highly offended, disgusted, and appalled that members of this community would really waste their time to interject themselves and spew hate, ignorance, and threats to a group of people who were literally trying to find members. What's disgusting to me is that the Penn State president has not spoken out about this. The president of the school has not spoken out about this. That's what bothers me. You know, it's really funny. We always say, we are Penn State. Everybody is, we are Penn State when Negroes are running a ball up and down the field. But where are you when they're being called the N-word? When swastikas and the middle finger and body parts are being shown on a Zoom call? Where are you then? Because at that point, to quote my friend Gabriel Green, at that point we are not. So what I'm trying to figure out is at what point do the same people who rally behind the football team and the football community here in Penn State rally behind the Black people and the Black contribution that they give to Penn State outside of the football field? I'm disgusted. I am looking and watching that the State College Police Department fully investigate this and bring those people to justice, because in Pennsylvania, it is illegal. Zoom bombing in Pennsylvania is illegal. So all of these people should be prosecuted. So I think that it's immoral, it's disturbing, but it shows us exactly where Center County is right now, exactly where Penn State is right now. This is not happening in Philly. This is not happening in Chicago. This is not happening in Mississippi. This is happening right here in State College. And this is the reason why we need shows like this. This is the reason why we need to have conversations like this. This is the reason why the 320 Coalition and various organizations are out in the street protesting against systematic racism, police brutality, and all the other sorts. Because we have individuals who can't even stay at home and watch television. They have to get on a Zoom call and spew their hatred to people who have no thought about them whatsoever. And it's very disturbing. And to the Penn State Black Caucus, I am deeply saddened. I am definitely offended. And I am here to support you, and I am here to call out whoever needs to be called out, because this cannot happen ever again. And to my recollection, it hasn't happened since like 2001. So we're talking about 20 years, and this type of stuff is happening. So I think it's disappointing, and I'm waiting for the president of Penn State to speak out on it. Whew. That was a lot. That was a mouthful, but that was What's the Tea. Thank you. So that's our show. Black students, black teachers, white schools. As you can see, we heard from many people the discrepancies, whether it be in the curriculum, in theater, and in Greek life, all here at Penn State University. So if we are all truly Penn State, we should constantly be reflected. The truth is that black history is all of our history. And you cannot deny the contributions that Africans and African Americans have made to build this country to where it is. So the first thing you have to do is teach about it. Thank you.